Imagine you're on like the absolute most important phone call of your entire life. We're talking a direct, open line to the divine.
Right, the ultimate connection.
Exactly. But at the exact same time, you're just mindlessly scrolling Instagram on another screen, like you're half listening to eternity while double tapping a picture of someone's lunch.
It's a pretty hilarious and honestly a bit painful image.
It really is. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today's source material is this fascinating sermon that lays out a really practical 5-step framework for spiritual growth. And right out of the gate, it targets that exact modern absurdity.
Yeah, the way we claim to desperately want profound revelation, but, our attention is just hopelessly fragmented.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the author uses a really specific analogy here to kind of dismantle that passive mindset we usually have.
They do. They compare spiritual progression to an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And, for an airplane to actually fly, it needs two wings working in absolute tandem. You've got the wing of revelation, which is like receiving an insight or a prompting. And then you have the wing of action.
Which implies you can't just glide through your spiritual life if one of those wings stops working. Like, if you get revelation but you don't act on it.
Or if you just run around acting without any real insight or direction.
Yeah, exactly. You don't just hover magically in midair. You crash.
Precisely. You lose altitude immediately. It's that continuous cycle of receiving and acting that actually keeps the plane in the air.
I love that because it completely removes the bystander mentality. You aren't just sitting in the cabin waiting for the pilot to announce you've arrived at enlightenment. You're in the cockpit.
You are actively flying the machine.
But before this airplane can even think about taking off, the source argues there's a pretty serious prerequisite. Like, we have to clear the runway of debris first.
Right. The first step is essentially to cultivate stillness. The text cites that ancient directive from Psalm 46.10, be still and know that I am God.
And the modern translation the speaker offers is basically just be still, put the phone down, which is great. But I have to ask, is this just another author offering up standard digital detox advice?
We do hear that everywhere.
Yeah, put the phone away, screen time is bad for your dopamine, all that stuff.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the author isn't actually making a physiological argument about screen time. They're making a theological and a cognitive one.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about resting your eyes from blue light.
Not at all. It's an active, rigorous training of the mind. The goal isn't empty silence, which is what a digital detox usually aims for. The goal is focused silence.
Okay, focused silence.
Yeah, you are deliberately commanding your attention to shift away from the relentless noise of the world. And honestly, away from your own internal looping anxieties.
That internal loop is the absolute hardest part to mute. You put the phone down, and suddenly your brain just starts generating a massive to-do list for the week.
Which is exactly why the author suggests a very specific structured exercise. They call it the conscious slowdown.
And you don't even need an hour for this. Right?
No, just 5 minutes. You take 5 minutes of daily sacred silence, you set a timer, you completely remove all digital devices, and you use that phrase, be still and know that I am God, to mentally tether yourself whenever your mind inevitably wanders.
And crucially, you have to have a journal open right in front of you. The text insists you write down any quiet thoughts that arise immediately, like not later that evening, but right then in that 5-minute window.
Yeah, to capture the raw data.
Right, before your logical brain tries to edit it and tell you it's a dumb idea.
Exactly. It prevents the phenomena of cognitive degradation. When a genuine prompting or insight surfaces from the subconscious or from a spiritual source, it's often really fragile.
Fragile. I like that word for it.
Yeah, if you don't anchor it into physical reality by physically writing it down, the overwhelming noise of your day will literally wash it away within minutes. Capturing it honors the stillness.
Okay, so you sit in the silence, you clear the runway, and then you open your texts or scriptures. But the way we engage with that material is like the next massive shift in this framework.
It's a huge pivot. The source warns very strongly against reading sacred texts the way you would read a dense, hundreds of pages long legal document.
Because nobody wants to read terms and conditions for their soul.
No, definitely not. And the problem with that terms and conditions approach is the psychological framing. When you read a document for facts or rules, your brain is utilizing an academic, critical filter.
You're just looking for compliance. Like, what are the rules I need to follow today?
Exactly. But the source insists you must flip that paradigm completely. You have to read the text as a letter from a loving parent.
The story Sister Camille in the text perfectly illustrates this. She didn't approach her study looking for, like, theological ammunition or historical facts.
Right, she took a totally different approach.
She just sat down and vulnerably asked, "Are you really there? And am I a child of God?" Those aren't questions about acquiring head-heavy knowledge. Those are questions about identity.
And that shift in questioning fundamentally changes which part of your brain is engaging with the material. You move from critical analysis to receptive empathy.
Wow, receptive empathy.
Yeah, you're no longer trying to master the text. You're allowing the text to read you. You're looking for a deeply personal witness rather than just a general understanding of some doctrine.
Which totally challenges the whole concept of being, quote-unquote, well-read in a spiritual sense. We spend so much time treating study like an accumulation of trivia.
We really do.
So to combat this, the source pushes for a scripture dialogue exercise. Basically, before you open a single page, you formulate one highly specific, deeply personal question.
Like, what is preventing me from acting on this teaching in my marriage right now?
Exactly. And you hold that specific question as the lens through which you read the whole time.
It creates a powerful feedback loop. When you ask a targeted question, you prime your reticular activating system to notice answers that you would otherwise just gloss over completely. The text actually becomes a dynamic, two-way conversation.
But man, that creates a new, far more difficult problem.
Oh, for sure.
You sit in the silence, you ask a vulnerable question, you actually get a personalized answer or prompting. But what happens when that prompting asks you to do something terribly inconvenient?
Yeah, that's the catch.
The source argues for immediate action. The rule is simply, act before logic.
Which is arguably the most disruptive idea in the entire sermon. They share this anecdote about a bishop who gets a sudden, inexplicable thought to help someone pay for their gas.
And the mandate is that he has to act on it the absolute second the thought occurs. But wait, acting before logic? Isn't that reckless?
It definitely sounds reckless at first.
Right, like, if I get a thought to pay for a stranger's gas, my brain is instinctively going to analyze the risk. I'll think, well, my budget is tight, or do they even really need it, or am I going to look crazy approaching them?
This raises an important question about the nature of intuition versus anxiety.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, anxiety is almost universally inward-focused. It's about protecting yourself, preserving your ego, or fearing a negative outcome. But the promptings described in this framework are outward-focused.
Meaning they're about other people.
Right. They are spontaneous impulses to elevate, help, or connect with someone else. But the moment you apply logical risk analysis to an outward-focused impulse, you inadvertently trigger your brain's threat detection system.
Because the amygdala misinterprets social vulnerability as a literal physical threat. Approaching a stranger to pay for their gas feels socially risky, so the brain just slams on the brakes.
Exactly why the author states that adding the word but or why to a prompting actually kills the miracle. Logical analysis in that specific fleeting moment is just fear disguised as wisdom.
Fear disguised as wisdom. That hits hard.
Yeah, you'll talk yourself out of the action 9 times out of 10.
It's remarkably similar to muscle memory in high-stakes sports.
Yeah.
If a major league batter consciously thinks about the mechanics of how to swing at a 90-mile-an-hour fastball while the pitch is in the air, they strike out every single time.
The conscious logical processing speed is just too slow. They have to rely on reflexive muscle memory.
And the source is asking us to develop spiritual muscle memory. The analysis of the event comes later, but the reflexive action has to come first. It's like that app analogy they use.
Oh, right, the auto-update app.
Yeah, having God's app downloaded on your phone is a total waste if you don't actually open it and use it immediately when you get a notification.
That's a great way to put it. By acting immediately, you bypass the hesitation that keeps most people locked in their own heads. You allow yourself to become an unimpeded tool for the divine.
But of course, acting reflexively without the safety net of overanalysis guarantees one thing: you are absolutely going to get it wrong sometime.
Oh, you'll definitely strike out.
Which is why the next phase of this cycle is so crucial. If you are acting boldly, you will make mistakes. You'll misinterpret promptings or just execute things poorly. The source anticipates this and offers a total redefinition of failure.
The author points out that spiritual growth is not a microwave process. It's not instant. It requires the excruciating patience of refining.
And they highlight prominent historical figures to prove this right, specifically Joseph Smith's early translation process and his scribe, Oliver Cowdery.
Yeah, the situation with Oliver is such a perfect case study. He essentially thought he could just ask for the ability to translate and it would be magically handed to him on a silver platter.
And when he failed, the counsel he received wasn't that he was unworthy or a bad person. It was just that he hadn't studied it out in his mind. He actually had to learn the mechanics of receiving revelation through trial and error.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of behavioral psychology, the shift the source demands here is profound. Because normally when we fail at something, especially something deeply personal or spiritual, our default setting is a shame cycle.
We immediately think, this is proof that I am fundamentally broken.
Or I am just not cut out for this.
Yeah.
But the framework insists you reframe that event entirely. Mistakes are not moral failings. They're simply valuable data in the refining process.
Think about the mistake you made yesterday, the one that made you cringe while you're trying to fall asleep last night. Your internal monologue probably told you that you are an undisciplined, flawed person.
It usually does.
But what if you looked at that exact same event and just said, well, that's interesting data on what my triggers are, and completely left the judgment out of it? It changes everything.
It really does. The data collection mindset keeps the airplane moving forward. The shame cycle grounds it entirely.
There is a quote included from Elder Holland that I love. It says, somewhere in eternity, the refining ends.
Not today.
Right. Not today, not by next Friday, somewhere in eternity. It gives us permission to accept the messy, fumbling reality of being human. If a misstep is just a data point, you just adjust the trajectory of your wings and you keep flying.
But, and this is key, you aren't gathering this data in an isolated laboratory. The text moves from the internal process to the external reality that we are meant to be a community.
We are not solitary runners on the straight and narrow path.
No, the source is adamant about this. It shares stories of the women's organization, the Relief Society, actively knocking on doors to check on each other during incredibly difficult times.
And the story of John Manning and Troy Russell. Troy experienced a devastating tragedy that left him paralyzed by grief. He was literally unable to even get out of bed.
And John didn't show up with deep theological answers or a neat little plan to fix Troy's grief.
No, he just consistently showed up, pulled Troy out of bed, and took him to go help other people.
Here is the nuance in those examples, though. It highlights the danger of the savior complex in a community. When we minister to someone who is struggling, it is dangerously easy to adopt a hierarchy.
Oh, absolutely. We look at them and think, this person is broken, but with my help and my wisdom, they can change. Here's where it gets really interesting. That mindset implies that you are the completed fixed one, and they are your project. But the source shatters that hierarchy.
It demands that when you look at someone you are trying to help, your only perspective should be seeing them as already a child of God and wonderful. Full stop.
You aren't there to fix their bad data. You are there to witness their inherent worth while they figure it out themselves.
And ministering from a place of witnessing rather than fixing alters the entire dynamic. It eliminates the condescension.
It totally levels the playing field.
Yeah, when you view someone as inherently wonderful despite their current struggles, it actually elevates the spirituality of both the giver and the receiver. It creates a mutual feedback loop of growth.
Okay, so we have built this massive dynamic engine. You practice focused silence to clear the runway. You read texts seeking relational connection rather than academic rules. You act immediately on outward-focused promptings before your amygdala talks you out of it.
You treat your inevitable failures as neutral data.
And you do all of this in a community where you absolutely refused to view people as broken projects. I mean, that is a heavy cognitive and spiritual load to carry every single day. How do you sustain it?
Well, you implement a maintenance routine. The source offers one final weekly action plan to keep the cycle running smoothly without burning out. And in the context of the sermon, this is applied to the sacred weekly ordinance of taking the sacrament.
And the ritual of the sacrament is inherently about cleansing and renewal,
Right.
right? But the author provides a highly strategic way to engage with it, illustrated by a woman named Sister Diane.
Right. She often felt overwhelmed by a vague, general sense of just not being good enough during the week.
I think we all feel that.
For sure. But the shift for her was moving from general guilt to absolute specificity. Specificity is the antidote to overwhelming shame.
So the instruction is to pick one specific mistake or bad data point from your past week. You don't bring a vague apology for your general imperfection.
No, you pinpoint a specific moment. Maybe the moment you snapped at your partner or the prompting you ignored out of fear.
And when you're taking the bread and water, You consciously hand that one specific data point over to the concept of grace or Christ's atonement, and you deliberately let it go.
It prevents the weekly ritual from becoming a passive habit.
Yeah.
It acts as a cognitive unburdening. Because if you don't actively offload the bad data you've collected all week, the sheer weight of it will eventually pull the airplane out of the sky.
It systematically clears the psychological cache, so you can begin the cycle of stillness, study, and action again the next morning without carrying all the baggage of the previous week.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the blueprint this source has provided, the core message is that profound personal and spiritual growth is not a mystery, and it certainly isn't passive.
It is a joint effort that takes fumbling, imperfect humans and slowly, deliberately refines them into completed beings.
You pause. You listen as if reading a letter from a parent. And you swing at the pitch before your brain tells you to hesitate.
It's a roadmap designed to transform you from an observer of your own life into an active participant in your progression.
We want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building on that crucial idea of redefining failure. We discussed how liberating it is to treat your own mistakes as neutral data rather than moral judgments.
Yeah, the data collection mindset.
So here's the question for you. If we truly internalize that, if we started treating our own failures simply as valuable data, how would that radically change the way we react to the failures of the people we live and work with every day?
Oh, wow.
What if your coworker's mistake or your spouse's bad mood wasn't a flaw to be criticized, but just another data point in their own eternal refining process?
It would systematically dismantle the culture of judgment and replace it with genuine curiosity.
A completely different way to operate in the world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We challenge you to try that 5-minute conscious slowdown today. Put the phone in another room, clear the runway, and see what you notice in the stillness. We'll catch you next time.